Hello, I'm Bakhtiar Sanova and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. US President Donald Trump says he will increase his new global tariffs to 15%. Fighting rages in eastern Ukraine as Russia's invasion enters fifth year. And President Pezeshkian says Iran will not bow after Trump warns of possible strikes on Iran. US President Donald Trump has raised the temporary tariff on imports to 15%, just a day after the Supreme Court struck down his previous trade program.
US President Donald Trump has increased a temporary tariff on all US imports from 10 to 15%, the highest level allowed under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act. The decision came less than 24 hours after the Supreme Court ruled that he had exceeded his authority by imposing sweeping global tariffs under a 1977 Emergency Powers Law. In a 6-3 decision, the justices said the International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not grant the president the powers he claimed. In response, Trump turned to a different and largely untested law that allows tariffs of up to 15% for 150 days, unless Congress votes to extend them. The White House says certain goods, including critical minerals, metals, and energy products, are exempt. The decision has also created confusion over existing trade agreements. US Trade Representative Jameson Greer said countries that negotiated higher tariff deals must honor them. Exports from Malaysia, Cambodia, and Indonesia will continue to face agreed rates of 19%, even though the universal rate is lower.
Nothing changes where they'll be paying tariffs, and we will not be paying tariffs. Our deal with India is they pay tariffs. This is a reversal from what it used to be, as you know.
Earlier, some countries welcomed the court's ruling. French President Emmanuel Macron said it showed the strength of democratic checks and balances.
We shouldn't go too fast either, because I note that President Trump, after a few hours, said he had revised the measures to introduce new tariffs, but this time more limited and for everyone. So we will see. We will look exactly at the consequences, what can be done, and we will adapt.
German Chancellor Friedrich Merz warned that continued uncertainty over tariffs is damaging for both Europe and the United States. In London, the government said it expects its privileged trading position to continue, although business leaders warned the higher rate could hurt British firms. And South Korea convened an emergency meeting to assess the impact.
Demonstrators gathered in Washington, D.C. on Saturday ahead of the 4th anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Supporters of Ukraine met near the Lincoln Memorial for a rally that featured speakers and performers. Among them was the European Union's ambassador to the United States, who said it was painful to return for a 4th year while the war continues. After the rally, demonstrators marched through the streets of Washington, D.C. to the residence of the Russian ambassador. As the war in Ukraine approaches its 5th year, fighting in the east of the country remains intense. In the Donetsk region, towns close to the front line continue to face daily attacks from drones and guided bombs.
The war in Ukraine is about to enter its 5th year. The fighting affects the whole country, but the east has suffered the most. In the Donetsk region, near the town of Bilozerske, much of the area lies in ruins after months of drone and guided bomb strikes. Just 14 kilometers from the front line, residential buildings are gutted. Cars lie wrecked in courtyards. Personal belongings are scattered across shattered stairwells. Once home to around 11,000 people, Bilozerske now has only about 1,000 residents left. Those who remain are trying to survive in damaged homes and constant danger.
Well, it's not too bad indoors. I use the cats as a guide. If they start running around the house, that means the drones are flying. We try to get out quickly, do our shopping, and by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's calm again.
Despite harsh weather and continued Russian attacks on power supplies, many residents remain determined to stay. Locals say the biggest problem right now is water.
Everything is fine. The main thing is that there is water. There is power too, but sometimes it gets cut off. Otherwise, everything is normal. There is bread, there is sausage, meat is delivered to the store, and people bring milk to the market.
As the war moves into its 5th year, towns like Bilozerske stand as a stark reminder of the human cost of a conflict. The Donetsk region is now at the center of a US-backed push for peace. Russia is demanding that Ukraine give up the remaining 20% of the region it does not control. Kyiv has firmly rejected that demand.
The UK government is considering legislation to remove Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor from the royal succession, a move supported by Defence Minister Luke Pollard. This comes after scrutiny over his ties to Jeffrey Epstein and a recent arrest on suspicion of misconduct. The legislation would prevent Andrew, currently 8th in line to the throne, from ever becoming king. It's expected to be introduced after the police investigation concludes. Buckingham Palace has yet to comment on the proposal. The fallout continues after the arrest of King Charles' younger brother, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. Police searches are ongoing, while reactions from the palace, the United States and the public continue to pour in.
Police remain outside Royal Lodge in Windsor as searches continue following the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The 66-year-old was detained on Thursday morning, his birthday, and questioned for around 11 hours. Thames Valley Police later confirmed he was released under investigation. He has not been charged and denies wrongdoing. King Charles, who was not informed in advance, said the law must take its course and pledged the royal family's full cooperation. The case has drawn international reaction. US President Donald Trump called it damaging for the monarchy.
It's a very, very sad, to me, it's a very sad thing. When I see that, it's a very sad thing. To see it and to see what's going on with his brother, who's obviously coming to our country very soon, and he's a fantastic man, the king. So I think it's a very sad thing.
At the United Nations, spokesperson Stefan Dujarric declined to comment directly, but called for stronger investigations into abuse linked to Epstein. For the family of Virginia Giuffre, who accused Andrew of sexual abuse in a lawsuit settled in 2022 and died by suicide last year, the arrest brought emotion and a sense of justice.
This is where the house of cards starts falling. And, kudos to the UK for taking the first step, for saying, you know what, we are going to arrest somebody who is held to one of the highest esteems out there, somebody who was a former prince. I mean, this hasn't been done before. And so to know what we should expect, it's really naive to say that we do, but we won't stop. I mean, Virginia said it so clearly in her statements, and I'll say it again here today, we won't stop until justice is served.
Across Britain and Europe, newspapers led with a striking image of Andrew slumped in the back of a crossover as he left the police station. Several front pages described an unprecedented moment for the monarchy. Public reaction ranged from shock to relief.
I didn't think so, no. I thought he'd go into hiding and get away with it. Yeah, so, no, that's all I've got to say, really. I'm pleased.
But the prince, I mean, that's wild. I think people are gonna really be, that affects the whole country, him being on that list. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
The investigation centres on allegations that while serving as the UK's Special Representative for Trade and Investment, he shared confidential government documents with Jeffrey Epstein. Newly released US files suggest he forwarded reports on countries including Vietnam and Singapore. Andrew stepped back from public duties in 2019 over his links to Epstein and resigned as trade envoy in 2011. It is the first arrest of a senior royal in modern times.
Clashes erupted in Tirana on Friday as police used tear gas and water cannon against opposition protesters demanding the resignation of Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama. The protests were sparked by corruption allegations against Deputy Prime Minister Belinda Baluku, accused of influencing public tenders. Baluku has been suspended from office by an anti-corruption court, but the Special Prosecution Office has called for Parliament to lift her immunity to allow for her arrest. Despite these tensions, Rama's Socialist Party holds a strong parliamentary majority, making it unclear when or if Baluku's immunity will be lifted. Albania aims to join the European Union by 2030, but the EU says more action is needed to tackle corruption and crime. Iran has pushed back against threats by U.S. President Donald Trump to strike the Middle Eastern country. President Masoud Pezeshkian has rejected external pressure amid ongoing nuclear talks.
Following U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to carry out limited military strikes on Iran, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has said the country will not bow to external pressure from Washington. Pezeshkian said the Iranian people would never yield to what he described as bullying and coercion, as Trump seeks to influence ongoing nuclear talks with the Islamic Republic.
Mr. President, what's your message to the Iranian people after 2 rounds of talks with them? Do you have any message to the Iranian people?
The Iranian people in Iran or people here?
People in Iran.
They better negotiate a fair deal. You know, the people of Iran are a lot different than the leaders of Iran. And it's very sad situation.
Trump's remarks come as US warships have been deployed near Iran. Analysts say the continued pressure and military build-up by the United States in the Middle East during nuclear negotiations suggest Washington's strategy may be aimed more at securing domestic political support than at resolving disputes. On Thursday, Iran and Russia conducted joint naval exercises in the Sea of Oman and the northern Indian Ocean. Naval authorities said the drills were intended to promote security and sustainable maritime cooperation. Meanwhile, protesters in Tehran have taken to the streets on Saturday to mark the 40th day of mourning for those killed in recent nationwide demonstrations. In January, Iranian authorities suppressed widespread anti-government protests with deadly force, leaving thousands dead across the country. It is not immediately clear whether any demonstrators have been detained during the latest rallies. Large gatherings were also reported elsewhere later in the day, with calls for further protests on Sunday.
And now we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Standard & Poor's Global Ratings has upgraded Armenia's outlook to positive, citing stronger security and improving regional connectivity, as diplomatic progress with Azerbaijan improves regional stability.
A new report by S&P Global Ratings highlights improvements in regional connectivity driven by ongoing efforts to normalize Azerbaijan-Armenia relations. The Washington meeting in August 2025 is credited with stabilizing the security environment and reducing the risk of renewed conflict. Consequently, the agency has revised Armenia's outlook to positive from stable, citing improved security and resilient medium-term performance. It adds that further diplomatic progress could strengthen fiscal and external positions, though setbacks or disruptions could weigh on growth. Meanwhile, the report by S&P Global Ratings affirms Armenia's sovereign credit ratings at BB-/B. S&P projects Armenia's economy to grow around 5% annually between 2026 and 2029, supported by resilient domestic demand, private investment and a strong labour market. Fiscal consolidation is progressing, with government debt remaining moderate and the banking sector well capitalised and profitable. The report also notes that Armenia's ties with Russia remain complex. Political relations have cooled since 2023, but the country continues to rely heavily on Russian trade, energy and financial flows.
Meanwhile, Russia's economy is also far from being in a perfect shape. Restaurant margins are shrinking and rising costs are forcing closures across Russia, even in Moscow. Owners say January closures are normal after the busy holiday season, but many worry the industry is becoming too risky for small profits.
Restaurants and cafes in Russia are closing at the fastest rate since the start of the Ukraine war. Even in wealthy areas of Moscow, spending is falling. Closures are seen from the capital to Vladivostok and signal a slowdown in the $2.8 trillion economy.
Years ago, people said a restaurant should have a margin of 20 to 25%. After the pandemic, the benchmark became 15%, and that was considered good. Today, many places operate with only a few percent. Many owners would not even start this business now if they could choose again. It would be easier to put the money in a bank and earn returns there instead of taking constant risks for minimal margins.
At a cafe in southwestern Moscow, cake and pastry shelves are empty and the espresso machine is silent. Owner Yekaterina Oreshkina said they did not expect such a downturn. A slow January, a 50% rise in ingredient prices, high rent and taxes forced her to close this branch, though her other cafes remain open.
Every year in January, restaurants close. Why? Because the last quarter of the year is the peak season for the industry. October, November, and especially December are when restaurants make money. If someone decides to shut down, they usually do it in January. So this is completely logical, nothing new. It happens every year. As for the number of restaurants that closed in Moscow, there is always a balance between closures and openings. In 2025, there were still more openings than closures. For now, I don't see anything catastrophic.
As expenses climb and profit margins decrease, more businesses may struggle to stay afloat as the industry is facing another year full of uncertainty.
Kyrgyzstan has launched the construction of a major financial and investment zone in the Issyk-Kul region on Friday. The Tamchi zone is designed to become an international hub, attracting capital, technology and creating thousands of jobs. The government aims for the zone to drive economic growth with projections of a 10% annual increase in GDP over the past 4 years. Planned developments include office centers, housing and tourism facilities covering over 470,000 square meters, set to be completed by 2035. Turkey has signaled its readiness to train police, rebuild the health and education sectors, and contribute troops as part of Gaza's reconstruction. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan made the commitments at the inaugural meeting of U.S. President Donald Trump's Board of Peace in Washington on Thursday.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan said Turkey is ready to assist in the rehabilitation of Gaza's health and education sectors and help train police forces in the embattled Palestinian territory. Fidan made the remarks in Washington at the inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace chaired by U.S. President Donald Trump. He stressed Ankara's continued support for U.S.-led peace efforts and stated that Turkey was prepared to provide troops for a proposed international stabilization force for Gaza. According to Fidan, the ceasefire in Gaza was achieved after 2 years of human suffering, crediting what he described as President Trump's personal engagement and collective diplomatic efforts for the breakthrough. But he went on to warn that Gaza's humanitarian situation remained fragile and that ceasefire violations continued to occur, calling for a prompt, coordinated and effective international response.
Our message is this: whether it's humanitarian aid, the administration of Gaza, infrastructure and superstructure services, or contributing to international stabilization force, we are ready to provide all kinds of support in all these areas.
Several other countries have already pledged to send troops for the proposed stabilization force, including Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, and Albania. The initiative is aimed at ensuring security, stability, and reconstruction efforts in Gaza following the conflict in which tens of thousands of people in Gaza have been killed. While in Washington, Fidan also reiterated Turkey's hope that the United States would pursue what he described as genuine negotiations with Iran. He added that diplomatic engagement would help avert the need for a military operation or broader war in an already volatile Middle East region. This is Adam Maro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
In Turkey's Hakkari province, heavy snowfall and strong winds have created rare snow waves on mountain slopes, attracting nature enthusiasts and photographers. The undulating patterns shaped by persistent winds resemble desert sand dunes and offer a striking natural spectacle.
In Turkey's southeastern Hakkari province, rare snow waves have drawn the attention of nature enthusiasts. Heavy snowfall last week saw snow depths reach up to 2 meters in parts of the high-altitude Durankaya district. Strong winds near Yeni Mahalle sculpted the snow into undulating patterns on the mountain slopes. Nature lovers and photographers visited the area to view and capture the unusual formations, which were also recorded in drone footage. Experts say the phenomenon occurs when persistent strong winds shape the snow into parallel ridges and troughs, similar to sand dunes in desert environments.
That's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for more updates, and thank you for watching.